Good evening and welcome to the Paranormal Lens podcast. My name is Chad Thomas. I'm here with Jamie Widener. We're both with Jott-Nyx Paranormal, and we are here to talk paranormal. But first,
Stuff. Paranormal stuff.
paranormal stuff, ghost things, ghost stuff. Not there yet. Hey, Jamie, what's going on? How's your week been?
It's Tuesday again, so hey, I must be doing all right, right?
Mhm.
Maybe here. So I don't know. It's been a weird one. So busy and not busy, and it's been raining for like a month and a half straight, or 4 days, whatever. It's the same thing here. So like it's just dreary, and
Yes,
even
it
my
is.
dog doesn't want to go outside. She always wants to go out, so she's just
Uh-huh.
like, no, forget it. My paws are going to go to pruny. Forget it. So
Yeah.
I don't know. How about you? What's going on?
I think graduation season is wrapped up. We've got
I
that
hope
done.
so. Gosh, I hope so.
But I'm getting ready for camp season. Before camp, we have a Paracon that you and I are going to go do.
Yep.
Um,
I
yeah,
like to think I like to call it vacation season for you, but
I know you do.
camp
So
season. That's fine.
anyway, but yeah, lot going on, but it's a good thing. So
Yep.
I'm looking forward to it. You know what else I'm looking forward to?
Uh, ooh. No.
Tonight's show.
Oh, okay. I was going to say that, but I thought maybe I missed something
Um,
completely along the way.
so tonight's show, it's a special show for me because it's about the house I grew up in, and not only that, we have a special guest tonight. Alex will be joining us. But before Alex joins us, I'm going to play a video that he and Ben did when they were in high school. And the reason I'm playing this is it's some good shots of my parents' house. And it also, maybe brings out the best in Alex. Well, maybe not the best in Alex,
That's a stretch. Yeah.
but anyway, it's gonna.
Hold on before you hit play there. Explain who Ben and Alex are for you.
Oh, well, Ben and Alex are my sons.
Okay.
Ben lives in Pittsburgh, and Alex lives in Mount Joy, and is on our team.
Yes,
So,
he is.
so, so anyway, how about without any further ado, I roll the video, and then we'll bring Alex in.
Great. Let's do it.
All right, here we go. What'd you think of that, Jamie?
A plus.
Alex, welcome to the show. For anybody who doesn't know, this is Alex Thomas. He's my son, which I said earlier. But
favorite son.
I have a shirt that you bought that tells me that.
Thank you for introducing me in that way and showing that wonderful video. I'm just happy my hair doesn't look like that anymore.
I have a feeling it could at a minute's notice, though. Like
100%.
Yeah.
So anyway, what we're going to talk about tonight is the house I grew up in. So I'm going to go through a bunch of stories. I don't typically we go through a bunch of history. I've got a little bit, but not as much as we typically would have. But feel free to stop me and ask questions, Alex. Feel free to interject because you know some of these stories. You know what's happened in this house. So I'm ready to get started.
Before you go too far, let me catch up on some comments quick.
Sure.
So we have one here from the Thomas Network. I know these people, so yay! And to the comment of my dog going out in the rain, Bert says that their dogs don't do rain either. So yeah, I don't blame them. Jim Bernardo, I'm sorry, is with us, and Jim says, "Hey guys, looking forward to your story."
Mhm.
And Bert's probably not wrong here to say, "Hey, switch sides." So maybe not. I don't know.
I don't know. It's
Hey, Heather's here. Good evening, Heather, and Bert and Jim and everybody. Looking forward to the show. We'll get to know Chad. We'll get to know Chad a little better, and Alex. And Jim commenting on the video. Well done. So yay, another clap in there somewhere. Heather says, "Hi, Alex." Alex,
Hi.
have you met Heather and Bert before? I think you
Yeah.
have at the brewery somewhere along the way. Okay, good.
Yep.
Good. And the Thomas Network, doubtful in the favorite son part.
do
Well,
you know
Well,
who
one of us is here and one of us is not. So
that?
that's true. That's true. Uh, Janet Thomas is with us. He says hi and awesome video. And I think we're caught up. So,
All
all
right,
right,
perfect.
take it away.
All right, so like I said, we're going to talk about the house I grew up in. Um, it's about 8 miles southeast of Gettysburg and 1 mile outside of Littlestown. I lived in this house from the time I was born in 1971 until I went away to college in 1989, and then a few times here and there after that. My father still lives in the house, and I get over there several times a month. Alex has also spent a good bit of time there. My father has lived there about 56 years, but the actual history of the property is pretty elusive. I do have a friend who's starting to do some research on the property. It's difficult since it started out as a large farmstead and has been sold off in pieces over the years. The house is a mint green, Victorian styled farmhouse that faces west and sits on the corner of Whitehall and Bayshore School Roads just outside of Littlestown. It's 4 bedrooms, a large family room, a library, living room, and a large dine in kitchen. The outside has a large screened in porch, several outbuildings. There's a joke there, but we won't go into that. A 2 level ornamental fish pond, all contained on an acre of land. My father has done a lot of work over the years on the property, and there's been a lot of change since I went to college. Now, the one thing that doesn't seem to change is that the fact that we don't always feel like we're the only ones living in the house. What we do know about the history of the property is this: it most likely started out as a large farmstead in the 1730s or 1740s. The farmhouse for the property was located in the Y created by what are now Whitehall Road and Littlestown Road. The farmhouse had a main house and a summer kitchen. Across Littlestown Road were farm buildings, and at some point, just south of the farm buildings, was built a tenant house for the farmhands. Both my father and I have looked through maps, and the first time an improvement is shown on a map is this 1858 map. The map is labeled D Bayshore, so I'm venturing a guess to say that that is the farm was owned by the Bayshore family. Until recently, I would have told you that the next information I had on the property is when my parents bought it. But last week, I had the pleasure of talking to Carl Goulden. In preparing for this episode, I found out that Carl had lived there from 1955 to 1960, when he was 5 to 10 years old. We spent about 45 minutes talking about the house as he remembered it. They lived on about an acre of farm property. On that acre was a huge strawberry patch, some apple trees, a chicken coop, several outbuildings, 2 outhouses, and one clapboard farmhouse. The house had no running water or sewer, minimal electricity, no central heating, but it was home for Mr. and Mrs. Goulden and their 4 children. They would also have 2 more children before they moved out of the house. Carl told me how they would pump water from the well in the front of the house until it would freeze in the winter. Then they would go across the street and get water from the tap at the farmhouse that was rented by the Redding family. I'm guessing the Redding family were the tenant farmers who rented the farm from the Maring family. They lived about a mile away in Littlestown. Carl told me how the Reddings would let them explore the farm, ride the tractor, help with the animals, and generally have a good time. He also told me about a time he decided to check out the baby calves on his own. He went up to the barn and hoisted himself up on the door to the stall. And in doing so, he caught his arm on a hook that was there. He was stuck until he could get the attention of one of the Redding boys, who helped him down, walked him home. He ended up getting stitches, but my guess is that was just part of farm life. Carl's father worked as a furniture maker in Gettysburg, and he would bring scraps home and make projects out of them in a large room that had been added to the back of the house at some point. Funny thing is, my father used that same room as a wood shop years later. Carl also said that they had a large garden. I don't remember what they raised, but I know it included potatoes and corn. They had bath time once a week. It was done in a galvanized wash tub. His mother would heat water on the wood stove and fill the tub. The bath started with the youngest and worked their way up to the oldest. All the children shared one room, and at one time they slept three to a bed. Infants were in a crib off the parents' room at night, and in a crib in the living room during the day. When I asked Carl about experiences that they couldn't explain, he said, "Yes, we did." While there wasn't anything specific he can remember, there were always noises. He did remember that the attic door would never stay shut. There was a bedroom that remained empty all of the time. His mother told him they were not allowed in there. There was also a dumbwaiter from the kitchen to the cold cellar, and he thinks his dad had nailed the doors shut on that because the doors wouldn't stay closed. After I mentioned some things, he said these sounded familiar. One thing that was the possibility was there was a doctor who lived there. Now we've heard that several times throughout the years. He also remembered his mom talking about rocking chairs, but I'll cover this more in a bit. Overall, he said life was good there, but there was definitely something there. Now, when I was relaying the story to my dad, he had no idea that Carl had lived there. He had Carl's kids in school. One of them was in my class. I think some of them were in scouts with me. So he had no clue that Carl had ever lived there, and they actually live about a half mile apart now. And Dad told me that he recently found out that one of his friend's mothers lived there and may have actually been born in the house. It's not surprising that in a small town we know other families that have ties to our home, but for a long time, people may have been reluctant to talk about this house. The house never came up for sale because it was part of the Maring estate. When Mr. Maring passed away, he passed the property on to his wife, but there was a stipulation on the will that said normal upkeep could be done to the house, but no changes could be made to the property. This meant no running water, septic, or other modifications could be made. At some point, the house was divided into two apartments, one in the front and one in the back, but this could have easily been accomplished by locking doors. A third outhouse was added at some point. 20 years after her husband, Mrs. Maring passed away, and the family parceled off the house and put it up for sale. In 1969, my parents purchased the house. They were a young married couple who lived in a rented house in Littlestown. They were both teachers in Littlestown School District. Dad was an industrial arts teacher and had experience working on homes. So when they purchased the house in June that didn't have running water, heat, or toilets, he thought he would be able to work on it over the summer and move in. While he and my mom were taking courses at local college over the summer break, they had a well put in and plumbed it into the house. They hired a company to put in an oil-fired furnace for heat and hot water. A relative helped them upgrade the electrical system, and my dad put in a bathroom and hand-dug septic system himself. Though it was a lot of work, they finished enough to move in at the end of the summer, though the renovations continued for decades. Being the Paranormal Lens podcast, we're assuming that what we're going to be talking about. Now I'm going to tell you some stories, and you get to decide whether or not they're paranormal. If you're joining us for the live discussion, send us a comment on your thoughts. Now, the other thing, I have a poll that I've got set up, and we'll look at the results later. But if you can go to tinyurl.com, Whitehall Road, and choose the best option, then we can look at the results at the end of the show. The first thing I'm going to talk about happened on the very first night my parents stayed in the house. They did enough work to make the first floor livable, but they hadn't completed all the electrical work, so light switches were not conveniently located. Mom and Dad had a dog named Missy. Missy typically slept on their bed at night. Once everyone had settled in and fallen asleep on the first night there, Missy jumped up, ran to the closed bedroom door, and started barking. Her hackles were up, and there were banging noises coming from the other end of the house. Dad got up, turned on the bedroom light, and opened the door. Missy ran out the door, down the hall, and into the kitchen. Dad followed, turning the hall light on, but unfortunately, the kitchen and dining room light switches were on the corner across the room. And it's not a small kitchen. So he made his way across the dining room while the barking and banging continued. He turned the light on, the banging stopped, Missy stopped barking, and her hair went down and she wagged her tail. After everyone calmed down and they went back to bed, the whole thing happened again. Now, as far as I know, that is the last time it happened. Dad has a theory on this experience. They had just installed pipes that ran to the kitchen earlier that summer. The area of the house had a crawl space access, and when he was putting the pipes in, he noticed a groundhog hole in that area. He put rat poison out, hoping to take care of any animals that might be down there. After the incident occurred, he found a dead groundhog in that area. So his theory is that the groundhogs were down there running on the pipes, and when the lights came on and showed through the floorboards, they scurried away. As he said, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Now, here's the first thing. Groundhogs are not nocturnal. They're more active during the day. Second, if the dog was barking, wouldn't they have run away the first time the dog started barking? What do you think, Jamie?
Well, what if the groundhog was hard of hearing and was visually impaired and didn't see the lights come through the floorboard? Maybe. I'm just,
Maybe.
let's consider all our options here. I'm sure we'll get to this. It's my story. I'm sticking to it. I'm sure it's something we're going to hear more often than not here.
Uh-huh.
I'll go with the story and stick to it as well.
Okay.
Perhaps. Maybe we're there.
Alex, what do you think? Anything yet?
I cannot disagree with Granddaddy. So his story, he's sticking to it.
All right.
Favorite son and then favorite grandson now too.
He's working on that one. Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. So the next story comes from one of my dad's students. When he returned to school in the fall, one of the students, and I think his name may have been Bryce Redding, I'm not sure on the first name, he said, "Mr. Thomas, you bought the haunted house." Dad asked him why he would say that, though he silently agreed with him. The student went on to explain that his father and uncle ran a farming implements repair business from the barns connected to my parents' property. They may have actually lived in the farmhouse. He said that since the house would sit empty, it would be his job to go keep it clean. He would start in one room, sweep the floors, and clean up any of the flies that would accumulate in the house. Now, side note there, growing up, I remember a lot of large black flies that would accumulate in the windowsill of my bedroom.
Well, maybe he should take more baths.
Thanks, Alex. Like I said, he would clean one room, sweep up all the flies, turn off the lights, close the door, and go to the next room. He would clean that room, turn the light off, close the door, and turn around and find that the first room was open and the light was on. And that happened continually. Now, there was an article that ran in the Gettysburg Times on October 31st, 1988, about my parents' house. The correspondent was a classmate and a good friend of mine. In her report, she mentioned that furniture moved in the rooms and locked doors would be unlocked. That's what someone had heard from the student. So far, you've got two things here. Like, would you have stayed in this house, Jamie?
Yeah.
Okay. But wait.
It's like an infomercial. Wait, there's more.
It gets more interesting. Mom and Dad were in the kitchen one evening. Mom had some items she was sewing laid out on the kitchen table, and she asked Dad to come over and look at them. And he's like, I don't know why she asked me. I know nothing about sewing. But he came over, and while they were talking, They both noticed that the chandelier that was hanging over the dining room table was swinging back and forth on about a 2-foot arc. Mom asked Dad why it was swinging, and he started to respond, because you reached up and pulled it back. As he was saying this, he realized her hands were on the table and so were his. He says he saw a hand that looked like it belonged to a man reach out from behind Mom, grab the chandelier, and pull it back. Now, that's the only time they ever experienced this. But that one's a pretty interesting one. One thing that happened regularly in the house was something that freaked me out as a child. Every night at about 10:40, it would sound like someone was walking up the stairs. You could distinctly hear every one of the 14 steps creak in succession. Then it sounded like the person continued down the hall and into the room that my brother and I shared. We would try to be asleep before this happened every night. I remember one night being awake and trying to hide from whatever it was. Eric, my brother, also can remember that experience. I think he recently told me that he remembers the time that whatever it was came into the room and he felt it sit down on the bed. I believe he also said that this time he heard his clock radio being changed. This would have been one of those ones with the big red numbers. You remember, Jamie?
Oh yeah.
And the dial on the side to tune the radio.
Mm-hmm.
He said he heard the radio changing and being tuned to a station that he would never pick. Now, we're going to circle back to an incident like this again. I will say this. I was relieved when my dad decided to carpet the stairs. A few years ago, my dad, you can see the carpet on the stairs here, but my dad decided that the carpet needed to be replaced because it was pretty worn out.
Yep.
And I went over to help him, and I'm like, Dad, I'll get the carpet pulled out this weekend. I'll be back next week and get the runner put in the steps. He goes, the heck you will. I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, you know darn well I want that carpeted before you leave tonight. He didn't want to hear whatever might come up and down the steps now that he's there by himself.
So that was one of the things that when Ben and I were doing our investigation, we tried to investigate, but we weren't there late enough at night. So we put a recorder on the stairs to try and hear it, and I think we tried to leave it there overnight, but Grandmommy picked it up and put it away before.
So, let's see. My grandfather on my mom's side worked for Western Electric in the telephone division. He lived in Shillington, Pennsylvania, but my grandfather was chosen to work on a special project at the Raven Rock Mountain Complex. Now, many people aren't aware of this complex, but it is an underground nuclear bunker in Liberty Township, Pennsylvania. In 1976, it was converted to a telecommunications center and sometimes referred to as the Underground Pentagon. Since we live about 30 minutes away, my grandfather would stay with us during the week and then go home on the weekends. He worked sometime in the night, either second or third shift, so he would come home from work, do some things, and then go to bed, setting an alarm clock to wake him up. He started complaining that the kids were shutting off his alarm clock. Now, this was obviously causing him problems. The thing was, at the time, I might have been 5 years old, making Eric 3, and Molly was an infant. If I knew how to mess around with an alarm clock, it was the last thing I would have done. My grandfather was a very stern man and looked daunting with his flat-top haircut that he sported from his days in the Army Air Corps. Let's just say, it wasn't the last time we were blamed for things that we probably didn't do. You ever thought, Jamie?
Oh, it's interesting though. Because the first reaction is to blame the people who were in the at the space, and of course the kids always take the blame no matter what it was.
Mm-hmm.
That all makes perfect sense. Just
right.
Your age group though is challenging to say you would have done it.
Right.
And,
I mean, I was pretty good.
I know grandpas with flat tops too, so I have one of those. So yeah, you didn't mess with him.
Nope. Now, the next story is one that my mom experienced. My sister was in kindergarten, and she was in class for half day and would take a nap during the other half day. One day, my mom was sitting in the library across the hall from the living room. She heard what sounded like Molly's platform rocker in the living room rocking. Surprised that she hadn't seen Molly come down the stairs, she crossed the hall to the living room and opened the door to see the rocking chair come to a stop like someone had just gotten up. She went up to my sister's room and found my sister fast asleep. Thinking it was strange, she returned to her reading. A few minutes later, she heard the sounds again. This time, my mom didn't open the door the whole way. She peeked in by opening the door a crack and found the empty rocking chair was rocking on its own. When she opened the door, the rocker came to a stop again, and it never happened after that. Remember earlier when I said that Carl Goulden's mother mentioned rocking chairs? I told him this story, and he said that it sounded familiar. He knows that they had a rocking chair in the same room as the cribs during the day. Could my mom and Carl's mom have experienced the same thing? Possibilities.
Certainly.
Just like any parents, my parents would occasionally like to go out without taking us along. I don't understand why.
You're a parent, you do.
Terrible idea.
When we were younger, this meant finding a babysitter. As many people did, my parents reached out to my mom and pop-up, my grandparents on my dad's side, who lived in Biglerville, which was about 40 minutes away. My parents went out and returned. When they got home, my grandparents were ready to leave immediately, and they never talked about what happened, but they also would never come back to babysit again. We were also friends with a family that lived down about a half mile down the road from us. They had a daughter named Carol, who was older and would babysit when mom and dad would go out with her parents. One night when my parents returned home, Carol said, "I'm so glad you're home. There were several times it sounded like someone was moving furniture in the room above us." Mom and dad checked, of course. Nothing had been moved. And Carol's not the only person who talked about that sounding like things moved. One of my mom's friends from high school would come over and visit and stay and sleep in the living room that we would have been hanging out with, and would notice the same sounds. One thing that happens a lot in the house is that items seem to move around. Now, when we were all kids, it was easy to blame us for the items that were missing or moved. Well, none of us live there anymore, but occasionally things still disappear. My dad shared 2 stories of things that have happened since we moved out. My dad is a member of the Rotary Club and carries a Rotary coin. He has a routine that before he goes to bed, he puts the coin and his keys in a basket in the kitchen. Then he will go up to bed, and in the morning when he comes down, he will pick the keys and the coin up and put them in his pocket for the day. There are days that he goes to pick up the coin, and it's not there. His keys are, but not the coin. He will search and not find it for days, but come downstairs on another morning, and it will have been returned to the basket. The other item was his wedding band. My dad had cancer that damaged his lymphatic system and nerves in his left arm, so there are times when it's difficult to wear a wedding band. When this happens, he will take it off and put it in the same basket he uses for his keys. There are also times that his finger gets smaller and the ring is loose. On this occasion, he remembers taking the ring off and putting it in the basket. A few days later, when he was ready to put it on, he couldn't find it. He vividly remembers putting it in the basket, but he began to doubt himself and thought maybe it had fallen off because his finger had gotten smaller. But it didn't turn up. About 6 months later, he was running an errand for my mom. He had picked up some stuff at the grocery store. After checking his pockets for his keys, he returned the cart and went to get in the car. When he went to pull the keys out of his pocket to start the car, he couldn't find them. He looked in and around the car, and they weren't to be found. So he walked back to the cart to see if he had dropped them there, and they weren't there either. He started checking all of his pockets in his jacket. Now, there was one pocket he never used, but he's like, might as well check it anyway. When he did, he discovered his wedding ring in that pocket. He got back to the car and found the keys on the floor of his car where he had just looked minutes before. He never came up with a good explanation. All I can say is I don't think that it was me who lost all those tools over the years.
Yeah, I have the same excuse. Yep.
Now, we all know that haunted houses have normal things that happen. Our house has these too. People would notice the smell of baking pies. The thing is, my mom would never bake pies. She could never get the crust right, so she never would bake. We would also see a shadow out of the corner of our eye, but when we would look at it directly, it was gone, and it shouldn't have been there in the first place. There wasn't enough light to create a shadow. We had lights turn on and off. I talked earlier about radio stations on my changing on my brother, but this happened to other people as well. The oddest one of all the things in my opinion, that I mentioned earlier was some sensation of someone coming and sitting on the bed while we were in it. I remember my mom's best friend from high school talking about this one. There were also noises that just couldn't be explained. Of course, some could be explained by animals or wind, but others just did not make sense. So now I'm going to let Alex talk about a story that he had happened to him. Take it away, Alex.
So, summer years ago, I was up on the roof and we were redoing the shingles on the roof. And I was up there helping put shingles down and we were working. And I was up by one of the windows and I looked in the window and I saw a face. And like the kids were at the house too, so I just assumed it was one of my siblings. Till I looked down at the ground and heard and saw both of the kids were outside playing. So I looked back and there was nobody there, and I asked my dad. I was like, "Hey, what room is this?" And it's that small room that you see off um on the left side of the screen. Um and he said, "Oh yeah, that's the back bedroom. That's the back storage room behind your grandfather's room. Nobody's really goes in there." So there was nobody in the house. Nobody was in that room, but I saw a face there. And when I saw it, it wasn't like I'd never. There was nothing scary about it. It was just somebody was there, and then I looked back, and nobody was there anymore. And it was one of those weird experiences that I can't explain. And it was honestly one of the things that has gotten me into this more than anything else.
So just interesting.
It always starts with an episode or an incident, and how long ago was this, Alex?
This was what 5, 6 years ago, more
Okay.
than that.
Yeah, probably a little more than that.
All right,
I'm getting
so
old.
yes, you are. But it stuck with you, and you've held on to this, as a catalyst moment for all these years, and that's we all have that. Anybody who's an investigator has that touch point, of something happening that's spiked our curiosity and drawn us closer to the paranormal, whether we wanted to or not necessarily. I guess not everybody sets out to be a paranormal investigator. So it's really cool, and here you are. So
hmm
Yep.
awesome.
And he's
It was one
turning
of
out to be a
those.
pretty good paranormal investigator.
Oh, come on. We only have so much room on the screen for his head. Let's stop that.
So,
Look, those headphones are swelling already. Goodness.
so,
Nah, Alex is not wrong. Absolutely.
so,
Glad you're doing this.
yep. All right. So moving on, we weren't the only people who had experiences in the house. My sister had a friend named Heather who had an experience. Her mom had told Dad about it, but we didn't know the details. So last week, I reached out to Heather to see if she could share what happened. She said, "Yeah, but I don't think it's too exciting." But here's what she had to say, and I took this from a chat conversation, so it's pretty much her words exactly. I came to the house for Molly's birthday. It was the first time at the house. Now, I felt anxious driving past the house. My whole life, before that instance, after, and even now, if I happen to go back to that town, it's like the house is watching and knows I'm there. I always speed past the house. Anyway, I went to the house for Molly's party. It was maybe eighth grade, ninth grade, something like that. I was an awkward band kid geek with braces and glasses and a few friends, so this party was a big deal. I walked in and immediately things felt wrong. My body went cold, and I felt something watching. Something, not angry, but frustrated. Hard to describe, but every fiber of my being was saying, "She doesn't want you here. You need to leave." She, meaning whatever entity was in your house, not Molly. I tried to suck it up, said it was just nerves because I was at a party. I remember going to the kitchen and it was like a blast of cold and energy. I couldn't do it. I told Molly I couldn't stay, that she had a ghost in her house and it wanted me gone. Now, this was back in the dark ages before cell phones, so I had to wait for my mom to get home, and then she called her back and made her come back for me. As soon as I got her on the phone, I waited outside for her to get to pick me up. Molly was upset and asked me who told me about the ghost. She thought maybe Terry, but no, I just felt it. Now Terry was like Molly's best friend, and so Molly had confided some stuff with Terry. Then she said, "I don't know how you all lived there. I couldn't do it for 10 minutes." So now I want to point out that this is the only time that we had something that didn't feel good. Now, Heather also told me about another place in Littlestown that she has had experiences with. So I feel like she is more in tune than most people, and that bothered whatever was there. So, so yeah, Heather had an interesting experience, that's for sure. Now, my brother had a friend named Matt, who also had some personal experiences there. We got a chance to talk last week, and he relayed 3 different experiences to me. The first was when he was in high school. My mom would help him students out by editing and typing papers for them. She had helped Matt on a project, and he was coming over to pick up the papers and visit with Eric. When he got there, he said he had to really use the bathroom, and Eric showed him where it was and went back to the family room. Matt was in the bathroom, and he heard a loud knocking on the door. A little surprised, he said that the bathroom was occupied. A few minutes later, the knocking happened again. So he washed his hands and opened the door, and no one was there. He walked out to the family room where my brother and dad were sitting. He asked Eric what he needed, and Eric said he didn't know what he was talking about. Later that day, Matt went to use the bathroom again, and he heard the knocking again, but this time it sounded like it was coming from inside the linen closet. So that was that experience. On another experience, another visit to my brother, Matt arrived at the house and no one was there. My brother was at school wrapping up a rehearsal or something, so he decided to wait outside. While he was waiting, he noticed movement in an upstairs window. Now, he had already knocked on the door and realized that my parents weren't there, so he was a little surprised when he saw this movement in the upstairs window. So he said he was sitting there waiting, and he waited, and he kept noticing that it looked like someone was watching him from this upstairs window. When Eric got home, he asked if anybody was home, and it was at that point Eric said, "You don't know, do you? We have a ghost." So, those are two interesting experiences for a high school kid who doesn't live with a ghost to go through. A few years later, my brother still gets together with high school friends, and they go golfing or to beer events, things like that, beer fests. So a few years later, they were planning on going to an event, and Matt lives out of town, and Eric was staying at my parents' house, and he said, "Hey, you just want to stay at my parents' house, and we'll go from there." They agreed to that. I think the best way to understand this story is to let Matt tell it. I recorded our phone call and I got his permission to play this. So I'm going to play you this clip. It's about 6 minutes long, but he goes through and he tells what he experienced this one night. So you ready?
Yep, let's do it.
Eric said, "Hey, do you want to stay with me at my parents' house?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure." Kind of having the idea that I saw that thing, but I didn't really pay too much attention to it.
Right.
And so anyways, in that one guest room that you have, and I cannot explain the positioning other than I felt like I was the bed and the door was right next to the head of the bed. And then there was like a small table or something, and there was a fan, and you had a radio, and then it was at least one window because the window was something that was kind of
Yeah,
important.
I think all those rooms have 3 windows. I think.
3 windows. Okay. So I lay down. It was hot,
Hmm.
and I had turned the fan on.
Right.
And I do not like when the radios they do all the blinking and stuff like that.
Uh-huh.
So I remember turning the radio / alarm clock off, and I turned on the fan.
Okay.
And I was drifting off to sleep, and all of a sudden the fan is not going and the radio is on. And I was like, well, that's weird.
Okay.
So I couldn't really figure out how to turn off your radio, the little alarm clock thingy.
Hmm.
So I turned it all the way down, and then I turned the fan back on. I got back into bed. I go to sleep. I wake up. Again, the fan's off. The radio's playing. I thought, well, this is super bizarre. But I've had stuff happen like that before. So
Hmm.
I turned the fan back on, super hot. And it was getting hotter in the room. That's the way I felt like it was.
Okay.
And I'm somebody that I can sleep with covers, but I don't like pull them up around my neck or anything like that.
Right.
So they were about like mid hip, I would say. And, I needed the fan, that was for sure.
Hmm.
Well, I was drifting like off to sleep, but not fully asleep. And I hear the fan click off, like straight up a real click,
Hmm.
and the radio play again. So that really kind of bothered me.
Uh-huh.
So I didn't mess with the radio, just left it as is, and I turned the fan back on. I'm like, all right, let me just figure this out. And as I was going to sleep, I think I was asleep, but again, this has been a long time ago. I felt like either someone sat on the bed and pulled the covers down, not super hard, but slow,
Uh-huh.
which freaked me out.
Okay.
So I jumped up and thought Eric was screwing with me. So I looked all over that room. I opened the door. I looked all around, and I was a little bit freaked out.
Hmm.
So I unplugged the clock radio thing from the wall, and I unplugged the fan because I was like, this just isn't a thing. And then I would say I stayed up most of the night, and maybe around 4 or so, I felt like I went back to sleep.
Okay.
The fan was on, which I unplugged. Nothing else happened with the radio. That was fine, and I didn't experience anything else other than that fan being on. But it definitely felt I was ready to leave in the morning. So, and I never came back after that.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah,
And when you like, if I remember, typically like Dad had that fan on a switch by the doorway.
sure did.
Is
Yep.
that what you were turning on and off?
Yes.
Okay. So it was like that switch was actually being flipped.
Yeah, making that click noise because,
Okay.
like I said, I would check because it's older houses, you never know.
Yeah. Oh,
So
yeah. I
I
know.
kept looking at like okay, is it like plugged in somewhere weird? But the radio on top of that's what really got me, and I don't know if I ever told Eric about the radio
No, because
or the.
nobody has
Go ahead.
nobody has ever mentioned the radio before, so I don't
Okay.
think anybody knew the radio part of the story.
Okay. Well,
So,
it just at one point it was going like up and down, like not just the volume.
like it was somebody was like trying to tune it.
Yeah, like they were trying to tune it to like an actual channel, but it would be like the in between channels.
So
Does that
the
make sense?
static. Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so I would hear like the talk, and then boom, static, and then the talk a little bit, but it would always like stay to the static part.
Interesting.
Yeah, so but that's what I don't. I was trying to think today, like, was there anything else?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, you know what? That's a little more than than I think I put together for a long time. I just knew that after that, just for me,
Yeah. Yeah.
I was like, you know what? I don't want to deal with this anymore. So I've had other experiences in life for sure,
Uh-huh.
and but that was like the most to me. That was the most like. So you always hear people say, "Oh, well, it's a good spirit or it's a bad spirit." I couldn't get a read either way. Like
Uh-huh.
that wasn't something I got. Like I've been around the bad stuff and felt the weird juju,
Mm-hmm.
but the physical clicking on and off, I thought whatever this is like screwing with me and either doesn't want me here or just thinks it's funny, and that made my heart race.
So that made his heart race, huh? What do you guys think? How would you have handled that experience?
I don't know if I would have slept in that house that night. I mean, I felt some weird stuff at that house, but getting my covers pulled off and the fan turning on and off and the radio turning, nope,
Mhm.
it's a little too much for where I'm sleeping.
Yeah, I agree. I'm going to assume, knowing your brother's age and assuming this fellow's about the same, this was probably an era where he didn't have a way to get out of the house without like just going outside. He couldn't leave,
Right.
Oh, I
especially
would have
where
just
the
gone
house is.
outside.
Well, right. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm hitting the porch,
And
Um,
when I was telling Eric about this, he goes, "Matt told you that?" He said, "Because that's exactly like," he's like, "I've had that experience, not the cover, but the radio." And like, he's like, "That just," he's like, "I don't think I ever told Matt that for him to know the story." So I don't like, and he hadn't shared it because I think it pretty much shook him up. So,
well, I have a thought,
mhm.
and we know people who
Mm.
know wonderful things and have fantastic things that they do, but the skipping of the channel and basically staying into the static channels, which
Uh-huh.
you know where I'm going.
I know
Um,
exactly where you're going because I had the same discussion with Matt that I didn't share. But
you
yes,
know,
I know where you're going.
and he mentioned hearing, having some kind of vocalization in there. That just makes me wonder if he was if there was a connection that was happening that was otherworldly.
Hmm.
Um, the stuff that we have seen TDSE and Staticom do um, have been, let's just blow my mind.
Right.
The stuff that I've been in the room to hear my own name being one
Hmm.
of them coming through.
Hmm.
Um, you know, but that sounds like that experience,
It
like that.
does, and
That
like I said, that was my first reaction when he told me the story.
And that is just absolutely freaking great. Like so
Mhm.
cool. I mean, obviously not for him. No offense. Like I'm not
Right.
trying to like downplay it, but it was a moment he was having. He was certainly not in a comfort zone. Glad he can make it through the night, kind of thing. And I don't blame him for not coming back. And fair enough.
Right.
But man, if so, we got to get there and get a radio. Like, seriously, we got to do this.
Yeah. Well, as much as we would like to,
I know. There's some rules here, but
yeah.
you
So,
know, wow.
so anyway, I still I have a couple more stories for us. So let's continue, and then we can sum this up. Um, one of our family's friends has said that as she approaches our house from Littlestown, she sees a figure standing on the balcony. The same person has said that when she leaves the house to go home, she feels like someone has joined her in her vehicle, and about halfway down Bayshore School Road, the feeling is gone. So I'm down to my last, I think, 4 experiences here to share. Um, this one involves my mom and my grandmother, June Moss. My grandmother always had a sixth sense. She knew when things would happen before they actually did. She was very interested in the afterlife and often read Edgar Cayce books. Unfortunately, it wasn't something that I had put together until she was gone. She had told my mom at one point, "If there is any way to contact you after I pass, I will do that." Sometime after she passed in 2014, my parents were talking and this subject came up. Mom said, "Well, we haven't heard from my mom, so I guess she can't contact us." The next morning, my mom got up, and her morning routine included sitting with her coffee and catching up with her Words with Friends games. She opened one of her games, and she came upon this screen. Now, the letter tiles that were in her tray to play were MAUS in that exact order. This was my grandmother's last name. Had she found a way to communicate with my mom that she knew my mom would understand? Or was this just an odd coincidence? Either way, it was a moving moment that I'm sure gave my mom comfort. Let's see. My mom passed away in October of 2018. and we had a memorial service for her in November. The family was gathered at the house to get things ready for the service the next day. We were sharing memories and laughing and crying, looking for the perfect pictures to share with everybody. All at once, the lights over the table began flickering and flashing. I asked my dad if he had ever had any trouble with this before. He said, "Nope, this had never happened." It continued for several minutes. While it was happening, Eric and I noticed that the light in the pantry had gone off. We all agreed that it was very strange. I can't remember how long it went on for, but it was startling. The next day, after the service was over and we were all gathered around the table again, the lights began to flicker and flash again. Had Mom joined us to let us know that she was there with us? Several times since that, when my dad was feeling low, depressed, and missing my mom, he noticed a shadow move across the room and then would hear a fluttering sound, almost like a bird had flown through. He said he felt like she was present at that moment. So I don't know, that seems pretty cool to me. So I wanted to end this on a lighter note. Anyone who remembers my mom knows that she was very opinionated about certain things. Believe it or not, toilet paper was one of those things. She was of the opinion that toilet paper should drop down from the back or the under position. She even admitted to changing it if she was visiting a friend's house. My father typically preferred to put it on in the over position. One day after she had passed, he walked into his master bathroom and realized that the toilet paper roll was empty. Now, this surprised him as he was a stickler for immediately changing the roll when it was empty. As he walked further into the bathroom, he realized that the toilet paper that had been on the roll was now on a neat stack under the holder. Was this my mom scolding him from the other side, saying that he had installed it backwards? Guess we'll never know. Now, I've covered a lot in the last 45 minutes, but I want to take this opportunity to thank a few people. Heather Banks, Matt Kindig, and Carl Goulden for chatting with me last week about their memories. Ken Thomas for compiling all these stories and photos from over the years. And of course, Alex Thomas for joining us tonight and sharing his experience. So, Jamie, Alex, I think I know how you feel, but what do we think?
Wow, there's a lot. I made some notes
Uh-huh.
that I'd like to kind of go back to, but we've been about 45 minutes without catching up on comments just to let all of that play out. So let me do that first.
Yep.
So I'm going to way back here for a minute. Tower Paranormal Investigations is with us. They say hello, everybody. And there's been a change to our system. This doesn't move as quickly as it used to. So it's like a slow load now. So bear with me. Tracy Willett has joined us and she said, hello, loving these stories. I am a childhood friend of Chad's and have been there several times. Wonderful people. I can't argue with that, certainly. Alex put in the tinyurl.com/Whitehall Road link to get to the survey, which we'll give results for in a few minutes. Michelle Zuner, I apologize either way. That's why I said both, just in case. That's crazy in context to some of the stories earlier. Bert called it first, road trip. Heather sometimes gets names. It would be awesome if she could pick up on the name of someone here or there. Michelle has come back to say, I'm jealous I never experienced anything when I was there. Bert again, thinking I would have slept in the car. I believe this is the Matt story. And I think Alex would be sleeping in the front seat and Matt in the back probably. And your brother Eric has chimed in and said, I always thought that whatever it was just wanted to let us know they were there. And see, our friend Stacy Lee has joined, and she is saying hello. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, she's missed most of this. Stacy will help you catch up on it on the streaming stuff later. And another comment from her here. I have always been attracted to this house before I knew it was yours. I would drive by it and felt drawn to stop, like something was calling me to come in and have tea.
Okay.
And we have a comment from Janet Thomas. I had visited in February, felt like I was being watched. Nothing bad. And I think that gets us caught up. Okay, good.
Okay. Well, I'm going to go ahead and share these results. It doesn't mean you can't keep voting, but it looks like we've got one person who lives in Littlestown, uh, two who used to live in Littlestown, six who visited the house, uh, nobody who said where's Littlestown, um, nobody who said I've driven by the house, but six people want to do a road trip. So, so that's what we got. Um, Unfortunately, my dad is not interested in having an investigation done there while he's there.
Yep.
I mean, that doesn't mean I maybe haven't snuck some equipment in and done some stuff, but he doesn't want to have a bunch of people over and going through, which I understand. He has to live there, and
Yeah.
he doesn't want things to get riled up and. But we'll see.
Well,
Maybe he'll come around one of these days.
it's my story. I'm sticking to it moment as well, right?
So.
My middle school investigation may have been the only investigation there for a while.
So what let's go through your questions, Jamie, or your
Well,
notes.
just a couple comments too. Going way back to the beginning, the chandelier swaying with your parents in the room. I get like vibrations. That house is that far from the road. I get maybe a truck came by. Like I get all that. But a 2-foot sway is significant.
Mhm.
And obviously his opinion of seeing a hand, moving it, is pretty fantastic actually. So
Mhm.
that's a really great capture. But that is intentionality of moving that light. Then
Mhm.
to get that much movement on it. It's not
Mhm.
just common activity of the home. Even if there was an earthquake, which I
Right.
know it's a rare in our area, but they do occur occasionally.
Yeah.
Um,
Now,
it's fantastic.
my parents, when I was in middle school, high school, somewhere in there, they used to go to meetings, um, where there would be I don't want to call it a seance, but there was a spirit channeling. There were three or four people that a spirit would channel through, and we would go, and I remember going in and just being intrigued and asking questions, and they gave us answers to things like why the space shuttle had failed, and what they told us in those trances was what came out months later after investigations.
Hmm.
So it was pretty cool. And my dad doesn't remember this, but I remember them coming home and saying they had asked about that experience and that it was a spirit named George and it just wanted to let my parents know they were there.
Okay.
So, so yeah, that was interesting. I'm going to show this because there's
Yeah.
another story that I
I'm just going to pop this up anyway. Go ahead.
Um, my brother Eric said there's the story of the wire that stretched across the basement steps when you, Dad, and I were down there. I don't remember all the details on this, but I vaguely remember like we were in the basement and we went to go up the steps and one of us tripped because a wire or a coat hanger or something had been like we had all gone down the steps and obviously hadn't tripped over it. But this, when we went to go back up, one of us tripped up the steps because this was pulled over. So anyway, let's keep going with your comments, Jamie.
Yeah. So just on the footsteps on the stairs, I have not at your parents' house, but I have that same experience in a house that I lived in Lancaster City. And I was, I'd normally be at work, but I had a knee injury. I was home rehabbing and working from home instead in an upstairs bedroom, which was now my office. And every day around 3:30 in the afternoon, there would be the sound of the storm door opening, which was a metal storm door, so it made a screechy-ish sound. Then the sound of steps, the steps being like someone rising on them, and then stopping at the top of the stairs. It was right outside the door, where, the area where I was, and it happened like 3 or 4 times a week over several weeks of being there. So, getting up and trying to see who was there, like because I assumed the first time I assumed like my people were there, like
Right.
somebody I knew. But then when there was no one, then I, of course, come downstairs thinking somebody's just walking around the house and like somebody's robbing me or
Mhm.
whatever. Nothing, ever, never, nothing. And, I can understand getting those runners back up as quick as possible.
Uh-huh. So, I want to throw this comment up quick. This is Carl, who lived there in the early, the early '60s. When we lived there, we also called the ghost George.
Ah,
So
fascinating.
that's intriguing. Um, and Kathleen, all believable. I lived in a haunted house too.
Oh,
So
come with Kathleen. This is Aunt Kathy. Come on
that's
now.
Aunt Kathy. I know.
Come on.
So
Well, I have a question. And two, speaking of, obviously this, I think we're all going to agree about this, but
mhm.
on a haunted house. But with the respects to the sound of the furniture moving from the first off the second floor. So I think you mentioned that was in the living room where the people were at. But
Right.
what is the room above then where the furniture would have moved?
That is the one bedroom that had the light switch experience, the fan experience.
Okay.
The same bedroom was the one that my grandfather used with the alarm clock. Um, and I feel like there was something else up there, but it seemed to be in that stack of the house, like because the rocking chair living room, that's where the living room was where the rocking chair happened. So yeah, Carl said if something strange happened, we would just say to each other, "It's just the ghost. He won't hurt you." So, and again, none of us felt ever like that it was a harmful thing.
Right. Well,
And then Bert said apparently they were fairly friendly spirits. Seems like they were going through their daily routines, maybe except for the sleepover.
well, he's a newbie, right? So you got to mess with him. Uh, it, and in your research of the property of the house prior to your parents' ownership and such, was it all built at one time, or were there additions added on?
The house, I know the very back room, which is now our family room, was added on at some point
Okay.
because it's a different time. It's a lean-to addition to the house. It's like the rest of it's like a stick frame, and I can't tell if that was built in one or two sections. It looked like it could be two sections, and then the lean-to was added, but it's really hard to say. But definitely in multiple sections. So
Okay. And just curious in the sense, like, it could be something active in the land versus something active in the house, if that were the case. And it certainly still could be because the land was obviously there first, and whatever,
right.
it's obviously native land for that matter. So it could be a lot of things that are causing activity. I'm going to go back to the rotary coin,
Hmm.
and I'm a former Rotarian as well, so I understand this coin very well. And I had to look this up, and I'm embarrassed I had to, but I was thinking about when Rotary was founded, which was 1917.
Okay.
So if it's attached to the coin, it's from there forward. So it helps. Maybe that helps with some research to whom may have been there. But since it also included the wedding ring and I believe the keys, those three things have something in common. They're all shiny objects,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, is it that it's those specific things, or it's the fact that it is just a shiny object and something to play with,
Right.
an attention thing that gets your attention,
Right.
and that kind of takes me away from it being, something that's malevolent, trying to take your stuff so you can't find it, but just maybe being playful.
Right. Oh,
And
I
again,
don't think.
back to the
Yeah.
positive influence, the spirit
Yeah.
sense you have there.
Yeah.
Okay. I have more of a comment with this than a question, but I was watching a paranormal program the other day, and I caught something I heard something that caught my attention. It made me pause to think about it. But there was the consideration that when someone is at a place and there's activity there, and then they leave, and when they come back again at some point in the future, and it occurs again, it's very much like when you get in your car and you sync your phone, right?
Mhm.
You handshake with the system. It knows who you are, and then you get out of the car, and you go for whatever you're doing, and you come back, and it's automatic again. It just does what it did before. It picks right up. If you're playing music, it picks up on the song at the point where you stopped.
Right.
And it fascinated me to think about this, like from the perspective of you guys all being there, having things happen. And now as you're adults, and you've gone back obviously many, many times, and I know your
Mhm.
family's very close, so in your gatherings and so forth as well occur regularly. So when you go back, and this is a question for Eric and Molly as well. Do things pick up where they were the last you were there, or in your younger years anyway?
I'm gonna say that actually it's gone through a slower cycle. Like we things haven't happened as much lately. But again, a couple years ago when we were there with my mom's memorial service, like things happened. So we all know that buildings like this, hauntings go through cyclical. There's activity, then there's not activity, then there'll be activity again and not activity. Um, and sometimes that's just the spirits are fine are comfortable and not needing to make the people know that they're there. So
Right.
I will say that
Alex,
anytime
how
I'm
about you?
there,
You've had experience as well.
anytime I'm there, I don't feel alone, but like in a you're being watched kind of way, but not bad. It's just a constant feeling of, oh, yep, there's somebody here with me.
hmm and
And
I
that
will say,
feeling doesn't go away. It's just I haven't had many things happen in that house since I saw that face.
yeah, I will say there's the one room, the living room that we have. I will sometimes it'll feel very heavy in that room. Like I've gone in there and actually gotten a headache at times. Um,
Okay.
so and I know Emily and Kylie were there at one point, and they had um, they didn't have a pendulum, but they had a necklace that they were holding, and it started swinging on its own.
I recall this story. Yep.
Oh, it was
Um,
a bag and it was a zipper or something like that, but it acted like a pendulum
yeah.
and just started swinging on its own. So
Yeah. Heather made a really good comment here that fits right into this. They just live there too,
mhm.
as far as who the spirits are of the house.
Now I told you earlier about my dad and mom going to these sessions with where the spirits would come through. One of the explanations that they got at one of those sessions was that there was a local graveyard somewhere that the spirits enjoyed hanging out at our house and they would just come congregate there from the graveyard. I had never heard that before, but he told me that this week, and I thought that's sort of cool. They just like to hang out there. It was a place for them to congregate.
Well, neighborhood kids all seem to hang out at one house, right? So
Yep.
there you go. You're just the cool kid house.
So, so yeah. Any other thoughts on any other notes you had, Jamie?
Well, I just kept coming back to the same kind of thing. I think there's two things happening here.
Hmm.
And this will be my professional opinion. No, let's go there. Like I think there's definitely residual activity.
Oh yeah.
The footsteps on the stairs, some of the other stuff. But there's definitely also a poltergeist. There's also poltergeist activity happening with things being manually touched, moved, and activated.
Hmm.
Things going missing and returning. Those kind of things. Um, and it all kind of fits in. Obviously, I don't know much more than the story you shared. And I know. Yeah, I know your dad. He's an upstanding guy. He's not a bullshitter. He tells you as it is. So I have no reason to believe he's fabricated anything or shared anything. It's not true. And
Right.
then the fact he doesn't want to know things just makes it more real to me. But if the opportunity ever comes up to do an investigation at the house, I'm in. Let's
Hmm.
go.
All right. Well,
So,
apparently we have 6 other people too who.
well, a road trip could just mean driving by. I don't know. Yeah. But I'm in for an investigation, and if the opportunity arises, let's do it.
All right. Cool. Alex, do you have any other thoughts on this? I mean, you've been there quite a bit.
No, as I said, it's just always feels like there's something there. Never bad, never malicious feeling. It's just you never feel alone in that house.
Right.
Oh,
I'm sometimes when I'm there, I feel drawn upstairs into that room above the living room.
Uh-huh.
I never actually go in it because I'm not going to do that when I'm alone. But I do feel like sometimes I got to go upstairs. I've been alone in the living room for a while, and you just feel things in there.
Mhm.
Alex,
And
could it be?
Christmas
Sorry.
time, I get drawn into the living room because that's where the presents are. But
Sure.
Right.
Hey, could it be that you were never left alone because you were, allowed to have that mohawk at one point, and you need supervision now to not have another one? Is that the thing?
yeah, probably.
Probably. All right, Jed. I was just laughing here to myself because as all I can see is you on the screen, and every once in a while I noticed Emmett's elbow dipping in
Uh-huh.
on
Yeah.
your left shoulder.
Yeah,
And now there's an arm.
they're
No,
trying to stay off screen, but they're still trying to get in at the same time.
right,
That
right.
is not a ghost. That's
Theater kids, theater kids being theater kids right there.
so.
Oh my gosh.
My
I
cats have been trying to make an appearance all day, too.
Well, that's normal. I've heard Maggie a time or two as well.
Uh-huh.
I just want to, the Lynches noted that they're in,
Uh-huh.
and the funny thing of this is Bert said that we'll get your dad an Airbnb for a few nights. So there
Uh,
you go. See, we
Yeah.
got this covered.
So, Alex, Heather wants to know too, why are you not going to go in that room?
It's mostly because when I'm there is for like family events, and that's somebody's bedroom over that time.
Yeah.
Also, it just, I don't know. I feel like I don't want to go in there in that mindset of being there for a family event and then going upstairs, hang out with the ghost for a little bit, and then coming back down.
Well, you can always go over on a weekend. I'm helping to work over there, Alex, and
Oh, I'm sorry.
Ooh, ooh.
so,
Huh, interesting.
Other cat.
so anyway, no, the house has been interesting, but it's also been a great place to live. It was a great place to grow up. I mean, we had enough land to do things, get in trouble. We had gardens, we had an above ground pool. It was a great place to grow up. And small town. When we were growing up, it was still country. Like it's not anymore. Where there's developments all around, but it was a great experience. So.
Well, and I said this with Alex earlier. Like, this obviously is your driver to get this far, to get
Mhm.
here. In this time and place,
Mhm.
and through the experiences you've had, in the paranormal. So,
Right.
you're right. I think the title of this, "The House That Built Me," is a very appropriate one. Because a house isn't a home without the people in it.
Right.
And it's clearly this has been a loved property for a very long time, long before your family owned it.
Mm.
And it's a place that draws people to it, and it's fantastic that way. And I'm so happy that you've had all of these really cool experiences there.
Mhm.
And sometimes we don't understand them in the time that we're in the moment. But now with some reflection and the collection that you've put together here is pretty impressive.
Mhm.
Stories, and I'm sure there's a lot more from others and
Right.
just people we couldn't connect with to do this.
Right.
And maybe some will come forward after the episode airs and is visible everywhere, and everything. So I hope so. Anyway, so if you're out there listening to this and the Thomases, you've been to this property and you have a story, please share it with us. That'd be fantastic.
Yeah. And again, I want to give the credit to Dad. He had compiled most of these, and I just had to. I translated a lot of them from what he had said, but
Okay.
he did a lot of work on this over the years. So
Very cool.
I think one of these days he should write a book.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
Well, he kind of has, sort of, right?
yeah.
So just needs a little tweak here and there.
So
Very cool.
on that, should we move on? Thank Alex for hanging out with us, and
Yeah, I'm sure it's past his bedtime, right?
Yep.
Yep.
past my bedtime, Jamie.
Mine too. No, not quite yet, but yeah,
So.
he's got his headset on to play Call of Duty. He's got to go. So
Yep.
All right. Well, Alex, again, thank you for sharing your experiences, adding some color to this, and filling out some of the areas that I didn't understand. But So we really appreciate that.
Look forward to seeing it the next investigation too, buddy.
So,
Yep.
and if you can hang out for a few minutes, we'll wrap things up, and then we'll touch base with you.
Sounds
All
good.
right.
Thanks for letting me make fun of you on this show.
Hey, all right. I'll get rid of him.
About time, right? Jeez. No. All right. So upcoming episodes. Next week, I'm going to explore Gettysburg, PA. It is the week before the anniversary of the battle, so there's some timeliness to this. I believe this is the 160th anniversary this year, so it's a big year. July 1st, we're going to do a season 2 wrap up. We've got a few submissions of top 3 or 4 or 5 episodes from a few folks there. Chad, if you've noticed that. So
I did. Yeah.
we're starting to compile some things, but we're still looking for some more. Obviously, get everybody involved. If you got a few favorite episodes of this second season or even the first season, just drop us a line. We'll share that contact information here at the end. And then we're going to take a week off because I don't know how to work stuff, and Chad's going to camp. So I noticed I said camp, not vacation.
I did. Yeah, I appreciate that.
And details to come on the 15th. Next week, we are going to tell you what we're doing. It's not a secret in the sense we can't tell you. It's just we haven't figured out how to tell you because it's going to be something uniquely different than we've ever done before, and it's a collaborative event.
We have to touch base with the collaborators and
to see how to say it. So and then more to come after that, of course, on the 22nd of July and after. But we only have so much screen space here, so we'll update you more later. All right. So we mentioned this so many times.
I got it.
So many times. We are going on a road trip, Chad and I. We keep talking about road trips. Here we are. We're going to do one of ourselves, and we're going to go out to Crescent, PA, to the Haunted Crescent Horror and Paracon event on June 28th. So a week from Saturday, we will be there all day. It's 12 to 6 p.m. It is a ticketed event. Tickets are available, of course. Lots of vendors, lots of guests, lots of stuff all through the afternoon of that day. And then later, please tell me that was a squeaky toy and not Emmett. With respect to the space, there is an investigation at the night of after the Paracon as well. So 2 tickets, one great day. Come out and hang out with us. We're going to have we have a very large space for our booth. So we are going to try to do something fun and actually have a lounge at our booth. And I'm not sure how it's going to play out quite yet, but come and see.
Yeah. So if you're there, stop in and say hi.
Yep. We'll have some stickers and we'll tell some stories and, the good stuff. So, all right. And then public investigations for us with Jott-Nyx Paranormal. The July 26th event at the brewery has, I think, 3 tickets left. So they're getting down to it. Do not wait if you have yourself and 2 other friends or it's just you or whatnot. That was one of those things where we talked about last week. I think it was 5 or 7, something like that. So now we're getting even less. So this is it's a limited capacity situation. So don't wait if you're interested in coming out to the Boobies Brewery in Mountjoy, PA, do an investigation with us. That is this next event. However, if you don't make that one, August 16th, September 27th, October 11th, and October 18th are all open events. Those tickets are starting to move as well. Although there seems to be pretty decent availability on all those dates still, but they will fill up, especially the October events at the brewery. And that Alex Thomas guy left a comment. That Alex guy was my favorite.
And Maggie's and
Bert's comment here. Awesome to hear some personal stuff. Thanks, Chad. Yeah, and thank you. That was very cool. All right, the last one we have for slides. Here's how to find us as Jott-Nyx Paranormal. Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, all of the above under Jott, which is JOTT-Nyx, NYX. JOTT stands for just one of those things, and Nyx is the Greek, I believe, goddess of night. So just one of those things is a night of the night. It's an acronym. And of course, all of the same are found with Paranormal Lens as well. Facebook and Instagram, YouTube, whatnot. And all of it's put together under Linktree. So it's linktr.ee/paranormal lens. Or if you are seeing us on the screen, and you can scan that QR code, to get the URL for all of our stuff. You'll find all of that linked together because that's what Linktree does. Pretty cool.
Exactly.
All right. And then, of course, if you're reaching out to us at all, you can find us at Paranormal Lens Podcast at gmail.com. We're interested in hearing from you about the episodes, of course, that we've done or anything you want us to do in the future. Any feedback on this one specifically, especially if you're in the Little Sound area and you're catching up to this and you have a story about the house to share, we'd love to hear from you. So please reach out.
Yeah.
All right. That's it.
That is. It was definitely an interesting episode. Thank you, everybody, for your comments. Thanks for hanging out with us for an hour and 20 minutes. Typically don't go that long, but I had a lot to share, and it was nice getting feedback and stuff like that. If this was your first time joining us, check out everything we have. We're on the podcast streaming services. Everything drops the next day.
Yep.
Or drop us a line, like Jamie said, at Paranormal Lens Podcast at gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. Or send us a message on Facebook. Any of those things work. So
they all do. Yep. This was officially episode 108 tonight, Chad.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow. Exactly.
So
there's plenty to catch up on if you're new for it to joining us.
So, any closing thoughts, Jamie?
No, just thanks for the episode. I know these things, when they're personal, you want to get it right. And I appreciate you taking the time doing all the the legwork to connect with people, family, friends, the network that you all are, to do this right. So, and you've done justice to the house, you've done justice to your family for it, and I really appreciate everything. Thank you.
You bet. Cool. No problem. My pleasure. So,
all right. Tracy says,
all
great
right.
episode.
So, well, I'm gonna start using this as a tagline, Jamie. So, everybody, good night. Thank you, and stay alert, stay respectful, and stay curious. All right. See you soon.